So it's so funny because when we started Landmark, at-home care was not like a cool thing to do. So everybody was like, why would you do that? That's like the 50s. And then there's a TV doctor everybody would bring up and analog to that. And now like, oh, everything's like, oh, it's all moving. I saw McKinsey just like really the 10 trends and, everybody at home. I'd probably divide up into two different areas. One would be convenience care and the other is, really complex care. Obviously Landmark was the latter. I do think on the former, it makes sense a lot, either out of home or virtual care. And so I think from the perspective of what Amazon Care is doing and other people in the model, where you can either drive out of home from a convenience perspective or virtual, that makes a lot of sense. And then I think you want to do at home care for complex chronic, where I think you can over apply the model, is that, well, care should suddenly be delivered at the house. And like from my perspective, it's one thing if it's convenient and, there's a sect of people that want to pay for that. At the same time, you can't really affordably drive all care, to the home all the time. Sure, I'd love my physician to come to my house all the time, me personally, but like, I'm not a complex chronic patient. Like that's not a good use of healthcare resources or that physician's time to come to me all the time, unless I want to pay a lot for it. So I think just like distinguishing that and what the right markets are. And so like anything at first, everybody says, oh, that's not possible or that doesn't make sense. And then, and then it changes around. I feel like I sound like Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos. Then everybody fights you. And then, I think just
you just need the turtleneck and then you got the full effect.
Good point. Yeah, no. I mean, like, you called and you said, let's wear black shirts today. And then I thought of,
Oh, it makes
exactly what I want to help with.
Right. Like you said, when you started Landmark, obviously, I think, maybe at-home care was something that was seen as from a different era or something that didn't make sense. I mean, how did you kind of even come to, the idea of Landmark and the notion that like this model, I mean, now it seems so straightforward, but I think it's because you obviously skied some of those tracks for the first time that now others are looking at. I'm curious what you saw at that time that got you so excited about that opportunity.
We didn't set out, actually, interestingly enough, to start a home-based medical group at all. I will say, and this harkens to my approach whenever I've worked on businesses and what we do at Rubicon too, which is to start from the root of a problem always. And so in essence, the work around Landmark started with, there is a broad issue with chronic patients and expenses are really high. And so like, what do you do about it? And what do you do about it that's not just something that sounds good? Because there are certain things like we just talked about, oh, it sounds good. Let's bring home care to everybody. Well, that doesn't make much sense. And when markets go up and markets go down. I've never found myself a good timer one way or the other. And I think your best protection about that is not just following what sounds good and being intrinsic. And so we spent a lot of time saying what actually works to make an impact from a medical loss ratio perspective that improves quality. And at the end of the day, the VA was one of those models. And the thing that, like, for me, a test on these things, and I work on it with my team now, is what does specific data say, right? Everybody has an opinion. And so the United States is a big place. Usually you can find places where there are data where things have been applied. You don't have to make stuff. I mean, look, I don't invent compounds, right? So there's nothing like fundamental science-based that, comes out of what my work is. And so at the end of the day, there are always analogs. And so in the VA's case, because they're an at-risk entity, they had published a couple of studies in a double-blind way on their home-based primary care model. And we spent, that was, I think, one of the best indications. There were other people we spent a lot of time with. I mean, it was months of work. And we saw, somewhat unintentionally, by the way, because I don't think the VAs, well, I know, their intended goal in home-based primary care was not to save money. Because in government, you're not naturally thinking that. That's not usually the thinking goal. So it was a byproduct, a great byproduct, by the way, and they did study. And so we thought, well, this is interesting. And the fundamental dynamic that is special here is they're at risk. and they're a big they're a big physician group doing this. And so we said if we could take this and do it, then you would unlock a lot of value. So I think that one of the fundamental differences from a Landmark perspective, or one most important, is we unlocked what we did, I think, because of a change of incentives. Because in a fee-for-service model, that wasn't possible. And then we put the care model into place for a very specific purpose. Instead of starting the other way around and saying, yeah, it'd be really cool to offer, because it is really cool to offer those services to people, but how do you find the right sustainable financial model so that it doesn't just go away, and it's not a nonprofit?